Thanks very much, Damien, and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. So, just to get to know you a bit better, can I get a show of hands how many predominant football coaches we have in here? And hurling? Perfect. Okay, so yeah, I figured we'd have, that's roughly around a 50-50 split, so my aim today, I suppose, is to challenge your current practice. I want to provoke thought. I want this presentation to say, you know, maybe there's something I could do differently. I'm going to provide a description of a bit of games-based coaching. So my own interpretation of it. As I say, everyone has their own way that they apply it and the way that they use it. So I'll just show you maybe there's something that you might take from the way that I use it. A rationale then for using the approach. So why we're using games, but you know, it's obviously the buzz term at the moment. But why do we do it? You know, there's a rationale. So I have a couple of interesting studies to back up the point. And then what a games-based approach session looks like. So I've chosen a topic that's applicable to both Gaelic football, hurling, camogie. So hopefully people will take something from that to actually see exactly how you can apply it in your setting and give you something to go home and maybe again it might trigger extra thoughts for you. And then finally to highlight the idea of a player-centered culture. So this is something I try and do quite often, and we have to believe in ourselves as coaches, as Mick alluded to earlier, but it's no harm from time to time to challenge yourself to say, well, is what I'm doing, could I do it better? So it's something that I've constantly done. I look at it when I started off, I suppose, coaching back maybe 10 years ago now, properly. I entered coaching due to, I suppose, being the lads would have called me Mr. Glass, due to my ability to get an injury at any time, hamstrings, limbs, you name it. I've had that injury. So when I kind of dislocated my shoulder back maybe 10 or 11 years ago, I entered into coaching, and I just loved it since, and I stuck with it even when I was back playing. But the coach that I was maybe 10 years ago and the coach I am today, there's been big changes throughout. Maybe some that have improved me, maybe some that haven't. But I'm constantly looking to try and innovate or to try and do something that I think makes me a better coach. And what I would say is that it's something that everyone should probably try and do. I know, even throughout this weekend, there's bits that I'm learning all the time, you know, even from all the talks today. So it's a very good practice to engage in. So here you have, if you want, your two broad categories. You have your traditional and your games-based. So your traditional, it's the majority of use of drills ahead of games, while in the games-based, you have more games than drills. So traditionally, you have a kind of linear process. So traditional, I suppose, it's associated that skills need to be learned before you play them in the game. So we practice high repetitions of drills before we can go into a game, and then we test them in the game. While in a games-based approach, it's a more flexible outlook, so that the belief is that skills can be learned through playing games. So that your likes of your first touch, the likes of your hooks and blocks, your kick passing, that they can be developed through well-designed games. So the likes of your overload situations they're very good for the development of skills, because yes, you're putting minimal pressure on the player on the ball. So for example, your 4 versus 2s, your 5 versus 1s, you name it. But what you're allowing to take place is you're allowing some level of decision making to take place with it. Then I suppose in traditional there's a focus on, as I say, there are opportunities for high repetitions of skill practice, and a games-based believes in that's having high opportunities for decision making. Our traditional is, it's really the teacher and the student, and while in the games-based approach, the coach acts as a more facilitator role and allows and puts the onus back on the players. So that's basically how, what an example of how a traditional session might be and what a games-based session might be. So Professor Moyna earlier had a similar slide here on the games-based approach here, and it really follows, I suppose, that you introduce a game early to establish context. So the whole session then is built around an area that you want to work on within that game. So it could be something simple like swarm tackling, group tackling. It could be a broad team like that. It could even be the team of working on our kick passing and saying in the game, okay, fine, how many balls did we kick away there? You know, when you bring them back into a huddle and you have these discussions, bring them back into a huddle. How many balls did we give away within that game? And at least then you're establishing context for, we're going to go in now and we're going to actually practice, or we're going to provide opportunities for us to work on our kick passing. And then we're going to come back into the game at the end again and see, has that changed? So you really are trying to make the session a learning environment. So the research, just have a look at these two quotes here, and in the green box I've asked you to analyze these statements in the context of your own coaching and in drills versus games. So if we look at the first one, the greatest improvements in fitness and performance occur when training stimulates the physiological and technical demands of competition. Okay? And similarly, in team sports, significant expert-novice differences have been demonstrated in pattern recognition, decision-making, dual task performance, and anticipation. I think we'd all agree that in those two quotes there, we've got statements that mimic or that relate to decision-making that are vital in high-performance teams and in succeeding in teams. But is our coaching, all right? Is our coaching ensuring that we're abiding with those statements? How do we feel about that in relation to drills versus games? The next study here might provoke more thought. So if we look at this here, we have a study here of junior elite Australian rules. So I had the pleasure, I suppose, last night of meeting Nicholas Walsh, and he would have made a comment at one point in last night's that they look at 80% of their sessions to include game-like activities. So if we look at the study here, that's after doing a comparison of drills versus game-like activities. The first point, the game-based activities were seen as more physically demanding, okay? While then the drills offered more skill executions, all right? But most importantly, the decision-making opportunities found in drills was 0, but in games was 535. So again, what we need to say to ourselves is, there's a rationale for providing games. I'm not against banning drills in sessions, absolutely not. You can see there, that middle point there, it offers huge opportunities for high skill executions, for repetitions, okay? But we really need to be conscious that if we're talking about developing match fitness, if we're talking about mimicking match demands, that the games provide opportunities for that to take place. Another study underneath here, and then it really backs up the point that Nicholas was making last night, was a study examining the practices of an elite rugby union coach. They found that on average, they spent 58.5% of times for most of the season in game-related activity. But when it actually came to the peak of the season, it was 83.8% that they spent in game-related activity. So again, These are percentages that to maybe keep in mind as you plan your sessions and as you go throughout. So creating a games-based session. I like to, and this changes at different times in the season, but let's just take it that we're in the middle of the season, maybe 6 weeks out from championship. Pre-identifying a team. So it could be something broad, all right? It could be defensive play, it could be support play as I've seen here. So developing an initial activity to exemplify the team. So this can be very simple, it can be just a game. But this is a game that you're going to come back into. Now, creating appropriate content to explore and emphasize the team and game context. This is the part that I suppose is one of the more challenging aspects for a coach, is developing the content. Like we've all gone to sessions with a notepad taken down. That's a great drill. I might use that. But is that appropriate for what you want with the specific team that you're working with? That's the question that we really need to ask ourselves as well. And what I'd encourage you to do is, and I'll highlight this point further in a moment's time, is that to actually spend that time, spend time planning and looking at that aspect of a game and really thinking about it and seeing, can you create suitable content and games that will actually tell the story of your session. Also, I've mentioned this point here about isolated drill content. So there's no point in us doing and focusing on kick passing if our players can't do it unopposed 30 meters apart or 40 meters apart. So what I would say in that is provide opportunities for that. Drills are important, okay? But everything in moderation. And it's choosing the right time to use it and giving it context. And finally, and for anyone that was at Professor Cushion's discussion earlier, questioning. We can't expect to just make up valuable and efficient questions on the spot. I would encourage everyone to spend time in their planning phase of actually planning questions as well, and variations that you can ask. So, what we'll look at here today, just to show you what an example of a games-based session actually is I've chosen a broad team of support play, and the sub-team that we're going to look at is something that I refer to anyway as third man runs. I'm sure everyone in this room has a different name for it, okay? So we have, I have a couple of clips here just to demonstrate what it is, and we'll just have a look at it there, so okay, thanks.
Nish, Ceann Dashiell to Jacobson, Mitro, Shane O'Donnell, Carl O'Connell, Shantuta Carchol, Vuelte, on Talaman, Eigen, Chul Bardemach, Agus, Kecho Tocht, because of Egan Coulson.
Out towards Owen Larkin, bounces back out here towards JJ Delaney, neatly picked up there by Michael Fennelly, stopped initially by Paddy Stankelham. And away it comes back up to the forwards again, brilliantly caught by McGrath, on to Lark Corbett, they fire hurleys at him, but nobody's able to stop Lark Corbett.
Round to Kenny, bottled up 3 Cork men close to him, Bernard Brogan just the same, Cian O'Sullivan spots a gap and pops the ball into the space, Mannion's out there and Jack McCaffrey going round the back, McCaffrey is through! Oh! What a goal from Jack McCaffrey!
Okay, so what we have there is, we see there, it's a type of support play. So, as I say there, what I like to call that is a third man run, but even in developing new content, it's sometimes useful to watch an excellent piece of play over and over and over again. Because what you're actually nearly able to discover by doing that is there's a trend. There's something that's actually happening to make that good play occur. So, if we look at this here, all we saw there was attacking aspects of it, all right? But that play that we can see is applicable in a defensive context as well. So the reason I call this a third man run is I call the man or the girl on the ball here the first person, okay? I call the second receiver the second. And then your line breaker is your third, okay? So you have your first here, second, and third. And what we can see is when that ball is being delivered in, that second man then comes on to, is delivering off to the third man. That play happens all over the field. We can see it in defense as well. All right, so here's an example here. Okay, this time our goalkeeper is the first man here. All right? Our half-back is our second, and our cornerback is our third. So again, we see the same process here take place. And basically, what this allows is it allows you to break the line. We could see that happen here in any way. You could see it from a cornerback given to a centre-back and the full-back breaking the line. You could see it from the wing-back to the half-forward and the midfielder being the third man coming on. So that is an idea, but it's a way of maybe developing content. That's the reason that I've shown the clips as they are there. So what I'd like to do in developing this aspect of it, and from a games-based situation. Now I have 15 versus 15 here, but this can work just as easy. 12 versus 12, 11 versus 11, whatever you have. Bring in the sidelines, make the pitch 80 meters, 90 meters. But allow the play to happen. Say nothing. Go from your warm-up, try and include in your warm-up, all right, the likes of the two-ball drills that Mick used. From a hurling context, loads of repetitions of skill. But after that, say, we're going straight into a game. Let the players even pick the two teams. Talking about player-centered, giving them responsibility, that's one way you could do it. So allow the game to take place, maybe for seven minutes. After that, bring it in. While you're in your own head and your selectors are counting how many times did this play take place. So you bring them in afterwards and you ask them. You start the discussions. How did we find our support play there? The answers that you'll get will vary. But then you start and you actually really start posing definite questions that lead towards this team with the kick pass or the strike followed by the hand pass. And if they did take place, that was brilliant. We created fantastic gaps in the defense there. We worked the ball out of defense really well because we actually did those third man runs. Now we're going to work on it more. If it didn't take place, now we're going to work on fixing it. So it's whether they've done it well or not, it is something that you can apply in that. So what I'd like to do at this point is probably go into an unopposed activity. So what we can see here is I have the groups they're in groups of 3, okay? So perfect for third man runs to take place. It's an unopposed activity, so it's given them a chance to experience it with very little pressure. So we have maybe 12 players, but this you could have 36, you could have 42 players on the field. They can be interchanged. They don't need to be designated corners like I have there. But again, you're allowing it to take place where the ball is being delivered there. There was our first man that's after letting it off to our second. And our third comes on, takes this, and the drill is continuous. Then this man takes this, delivers it here. And then we have a new third man runner. And then it continues, and it continues. But what you're doing there is they're getting to gauge it. You're letting them experience. And you're letting them experience it in a minimal, pressurized environment. So after that, now is where we kind of bring in a semi-opposed. Semi-opposed is a fantastic way to test the skill, but progressing it on a bit. And you can try this with whatever squad you like, whether it's an under 14, whether it's a junior, senior, whether it's an inter-county squad. So you can see here, I have different variations. I have a 3 versus 1. I have a 4 versus 3, which is something I like to use quite often. Another one here, 4 versus 2, really good. and 4 versus 1s. So you can mix and match with these. It's not number dependent, and the great thing about it is, as a coach, sometimes you're worried about having, I don't have the right numbers for this to take place. All right? This is an activity here where you could have groups of 3 versus 2, 5 versus 2, mix and match them. All right? But again, you have the same thing taking place, but now what you've included is a level of decision making. So, is the third man run always going to be on in this? What do you think? Yes? No? No, I wouldn't think so. Because, let's say, for example, this blue here decides to, so our third man run here is happening. And let's say, for example, this blue decides just to stick touch tight with this guy here. Should this guy pass it to him? No. They try and work it again. So, yes, ideally, we're trying to get third man runners here. But it's not always going to be the option. We're putting it as the focus of the activity. Up here, okay, up here, it's probably less likely again. But again, it's in the player's head that they're trying to do this. You've really emphasized the point. So, from this here, again, we allow that to take place. Bring them in for a discussion after this. And ask them, now you get talking about points like, so, to the third man runner, when did you decide to make that run? And you get discussion. They might say when he kicked the ball. You might ask them to point in. Do you think that was too early or too late? Someone else might have an input then and say, well, I actually decided to make the run when I saw the player had their head up and was ready to deliver it. So then you're bringing in even tactical aspects here. You're talking about them reading body language of other players. After that, bring it another step further. Bring it into a conditioned game. So what I've done here, and again, you can have this in another game at the other side of the field here. But have a conditioned game. I have it a 3-zone game here. So it kind of mimics what we saw in those earlier clips. You've kind of like a zone, you've nearly zones of delivery, zones of runs, and again, endpoints here. But what you've done here is you've provided plenty of opportunities for it to take place. So in an activity like this, let's put conditions on them. Let's say, for example, the full back line here, or the full forward line, whichever it may be, they can move up 1. In midfield, they can move up 1 and down 1. So what you want to see take place here is maybe for the goalkeeper here and to deliver a short ball out. So when they deliver that short ball out, you're hoping that pressure is going to be put on. And what the idea here is for them to work it to the next zone or the zone here, depending on what the pressure is like. So if the Blues are coming out with it here and they deliver a ball to midfield, what are you hoping to take place here? That you nearly have this guy coming onto the ball. That you nearly have this guy coming onto the ball from deep. So you're providing plenty of opportunities. Are you going to get a third man run every 30 seconds? No. It's like when we practice a hooking and blocking drill. Do we expect them to go out then in a match and make a block every 30 seconds or every minute? They might make one in 10 minutes. But what we've done is we've exaggerated a point for effect to take place. So from that then, what you can even do, depending on how you find the activity is working, put in an extra player with one of the teams. So if you want to really exaggerate this, put in a neutral player. So that you have, and that you're getting more free delivery, and you're getting more runs off the shoulder. So from that then, we might go into that activity and say, we were having a problem with our kicking, we were having a problem with our striking, so we might decide to work on a drill. So that's why I've included this here. This is a very basic one, guys. I'm sure most of you have applied this in some shape or form. So, but again, it's done with a context. We have a third man runner here. So our third man runners are in these central boxes here. So basically with this drill, it's really a pass and follow. but you're exposing them to high repetitions here. They're going to get plenty of opportunities to make those third man runs. So the animation here will show you what's taking place. So they're just following each time. Then the ball's been delivered here, and you're about to see your third man runner then come off the shoulder. All right, they're just showing the follow each time, and there's our third man run. And he then delivers, or she did the ball down here. Again, it follows on here again, and the ball is delivered here. And again, we've got another third man opportunity here, which is this ball delivered here and delivered. Here's our third man runner here again, and takes it off the shoulder. And of course, this is all happening simultaneously, and the drill starts again. But the reason I've included that is to say, that drills can be used, and there's perfect ones that will afford them the opportunities there to have 10 or 20 third man runs in the space of 2 or 3 minutes. And if needs be, have an activity like that, or have another activity. So, from that then, let's look at a tactical scenario where we can actually say, all right, we've worked on a game, we've worked on it in an unopposed situation, we've worked on it in a semi-opposed, we've brought it into a conditioned game, okay, and that worked quite well as well. But let's work on a specific tactical situation. So, what we have here is basically, and again, this can be set up. You can include whatever you like inside in this drill. You can include sweepers in here. You can include overload situations in here. You can include a one-person full forward line, a two-person, three, whatever it may be. So for this case, what I have 2 separate components. I have an activity here, okay, with 4 versus 4 down here, okay? And I have a 2 versus 2 going on in here. So this drill starts, or this activity starts, with a ball being delivered from the goalkeeper out. So that's going to be a battle inside there, okay? And whichever team wins it, you can put a condition on them. I want X number of passes. I want you to break from the square. And when they complete X number of passes or break from the square, that then affords them an opportunity to deliver the ball in. So here we have yellows are after winning it, and inside we have the forwards. The forwards are with whichever team is in possession out here. Okay, that's important to say. So that's why they're different colors. The defenders are always defending. Okay, but the forwards here, they're in possession, or they're in working with whichever team is in possession out here. So now what we've got here is a ball ready to be delivered. So we have movement inside, ball is delivered. Now what do you think we want to see? We want to see the break. We want to see our third man runners. So you've got the story there. You've actually created an activity here where, again, what I'd say is there's limited outcomes to what can take place in this drill. There's limited. You've actually designed an activity where the players are being forced. Yes, you're giving them decisions. You're giving them decisions what passes to make out here, all right, and how much pressure to put on, when to deliver the ball. It's not prescriptive. But what is prescriptive is that you want to see these tactical runs being made. You want to see these runs being made, okay? Because that's how goals are created. That's how breaks out of defense are created. So that's why a situation like that, and sometimes drills or game scenarios that are limited in outcomes can be very effective. Like I have the word there, trigger, okay? What I'd like to think is that then when you bring it back into the game, all right? When you bring this back into the game, that you have a player at midfield. And when they're delivering the ball in, you have members of your half-forward line, and straight away they're going, hold it a second, I've been in a situation like this. What should I do? And where it becomes second nature to them to make that run. And I feel that they're very effective activities in doing that. So following that, I would then enter back into your game that you had initially. And they're going in now with a focus. They're going in. Of course, throughout this, you're going to, and you'll be 100% correct, that throughout this whole session, the primary focus has been on support play, but there's been secondary aims throughout it as well. You've got loads of striking, loads of kick passing, loads of tackling, loads of tracking runs. So there's a lot taking place on it, but at least that you've actually dedicated and you've given a specific aim to it. And when you come back into that activity, you're developing discussion again, and you're asking them, how did they find this worked? When you made your run too early, what happened? When you made your run too late, what happened? When you didn't track a run, what happened? Try developing discussion like that within the groups. Is there anything we could have done better there? So, just moving on then to the whole idea of a player-centered culture. Does anyone know where or when that picture was taken, or have you seen it before? Anyone? Yes, it was taken when they came to Dublin, yeah. The All Blacks. This photo was taken back, I suppose, less than, 2 months ago. And it's not for me to promote the idea of player labour or anything like that, or to say that we will get our players, bring them around and do work for us at our houses, gardening and things like that. But it's to show that how responsibility has been handed to the All Blacks. They're between 1999 and 2007, the All Blacks wouldn't have performed to the standards in the World Cups that they would have liked, and there's been papers written, and the Hodge paper is one I've referenced before, but some really interesting points in it, and the legacy book. But like some of these quotes here about there was a desire to produce more intelligent players with enhanced perception and decision-making skills, and this allowed them to think for themselves on the pitch and become better decision makers, and better people make better All Blacks. These are all quotes, and I suppose the point I'm getting at here is that we should be handing players responsibility. It shouldn't be a case that the coach is expected to do everything, and that when you hand players responsibility, that you're allowing them, or you're enabling and empowering the players to actually do that on the pitch. If you do everything for them on the training ground and promote that culture, inside in the game or in the heat of battle, it would be no surprise if they weren't able to fend for themselves and looking over to the coach. Of course, we know that at that point, at that point, we're in trouble if they are looking over, because what we need to try and promote is players that are able to fend for themselves and are able to make decisions on the field. 2 minutes, it could be a fella that drifts out the field and leaves a load of space inside, and a decision has to be made by a player at that point on the spot, and they get it wrong or they hesitate, and that can be the winning or losing of a season. But even I find that promoting that and getting it where the players are driving the session, the players are driving trainings, the players are driving motivation on the pitch, that needs to be practiced. That needs to be practiced within the coaching environment. It can't be a point of saying, I want you to go out there now and I want you to drive it on yourselves half an hour before a match. It just doesn't work unless you actually have mechanisms in place for it to take place. So, for example, the inclusion of game-like activities straight away is a non-prescriptive way of doing it. You're empowering the players to make a decision, rather than saying, we've got cones here, you're going to go to cone A, then you're going to go to cone B. When you get to cone B, you're going to strike or kick the ball. When you get to cone C, you're going to do something else. But you're after telling them exactly what to do. Games provide the players with opportunities. They provide and they give them autonomy to make those decisions. Questioning. So I've included here at water breaks. The point that always gets asked to me is questions. I find that they delay the session. If you use the time wisely, again, for anyone that was at Professor Cushion's talk earlier, he had something as like 30% of a session was spent in other, which is transitioning. Make efficient use of that. So simple use, blowing a whistle and saying last person in. Instead of it taking 30 seconds of them coming in drips and drabs, you've got them in within 5 seconds. And then start the discussion that instant. Provides maybe 2 minutes for that to take place. And plan the questions. Plan them. There's no point in having questions that you're making up that second, because the likelihood is that they're not going to be as effective as possible. Providing opportunities for player discussions for upcoming plays. So yes, when we introduce a new activity, the amount of time that a coach has to probably spend discussing that is a lot greater than the player input. And we expect that. But what I would say after that is, you've said what you had to say. Now, if the players have been listening and if you've engaged them, when you're going into that, for example, that small-sided game, you might play four of those small-sided games by 3 minutes. And you might say, all right, we have a minute off or 90 seconds off in between. Give the 90 seconds to the players. And just listen. And say, all right, you're in 2 teams there. I want you to discuss how you're going to, your strategies for the upcoming play. And it just takes away the coach being the constant driver. And then I have here developing a culture where players are expected to solve problems within sessions. So that even goes back to that image we saw of the All Blacks taking out all their gear, rather than what we would see, or the image that some of us might have of professional sports where everything is done for them. You arrive, everything's clean for you. But it's the same within a coaching session. Allow them to make the teams. Give them deadlines. You know, it can be something simple. I want you to have 4 teams in 30 seconds and start counting. 30, 29, 28. All of a sudden, what you see now is panic. But you've developed a whole socio-cultural aspect to it. You see discussions taking place. You see players that weren't leaders before, or that mightn't have spoke before, and all of a sudden they're going, you go here, you go there. And there's a bit of crack with it as well. When you put a timeline on it and you have some sort of punishment, it could be 2 press-ups, 5 press-ups. You know, if you want to include your conditioning with it, put in 20, all right? So you can add it in. You can be inventive with it. That's the point I'm making. But there are opportunities to do that. So don't be under any illusion, guys. Challenges exist in employing this. You have the whole concept of creating new content. And when a game doesn't work, we've all seen there where it just doesn't happen. But you learn from it. The players learn from it. The point I suppose I'm making here is don't give up on it. Don't get embarrassed by it. If players see your enthusiasm, if players see that you're trying, they will try and make it work. And if you've spent the time thinking and planning it, and they can see that, you know, it could be a case that an activity that you have planned to work perfect in 1 session, it might take 3 sessions to do it. And your delivery of questioning. But what I'd say is accept that it's going to take place. Embrace it. Because solving a problem, when we solve a problem, it makes us better and persist. So the take-home messages, guys, I would have for us today: reflect and challenge your coaching approach. Take time to plan, so your session content, the sequence of it, the questions. Introduce a game at an early point in the session and return to it. And the awareness of how many games exist So I've tried to give an example anyway of games that you can use within your coaching. And there's vast amounts that you can use. I'm sure there's ones up that, you know, everyone has a unique way and a unique type of game that they can use. And then that whole idea of a player culture. I wish you the best of luck, guys, in your coaching, and it's been a pleasure standing in front of you. All right?